Hey, everybody. Interesting chat today around why broadband isn't just broadband anymore and how massive networks are shaking up how MSPs think about carriers and connectivity. James, how are you?
Good. How are you doing, Evan?
I'm doing great. Thanks for being here. Longtime fellow telecom and networking geek. So looking forward to geeking out with you. Before that, maybe introduce yourself and how do you describe massive networks these days?
Well, I'm, James Coberly CTO of Massive Networks. I come from 35 plus years of IT and telecom from the dawn of, the unfortunate fax machine tech to, on up. Um, and, as I've learned over decades of networking and experience that, we've always had our battles with technologies, things like that, adoption of technologies, understanding technologies. New stuff comes out, you can't get information on it. How do I use it? What do I want to do with it? Where's my owner's manual for this cool thing you just sold me? Um, well, that leads us a little further into massive networks. We're pretty much a full service telecom, but our priority focus really is on not just having you have a circuit and a solution. It's having a relationship as a partner in your process versus being a vendor to you. Our engineering is included, our monitoring and network services are included. Network operations center is generally happy to talk to people. Support desk is the same. They love to hear somebody call them. It's just trying to upend the relationship side of the entire organization. We provide a high performance network, internet, private networking, EWAN, ELAN, cloud compute access, things like that. And again, not always do you understand how to mix and match and do what you want with it. And at any point in time, our engineering crew can jump in and happy to talk and discuss layouts, structures, proper IP solutions, how to use what you want to do. Make sure you've got an industry standard best practice applied. You've all your layer 2s separated properly, your layer 3s properly isolated and firewalled. You've got, proper east-west redundancies, whatever you may need, depending on your platform. And that's on the basis of, we're the professionals in the industry, but we haven't been great at sharing how and what to do with it and how to use it properly. You can learn how to program a Juniper, you can learn how to program a Cisco, but understanding how that all applies in the real world doesn't always come through the book or through the training course. And that's where our engineering team and deep experience comes into play on that side. And then we head up the same thing after sales, customer service support, dedicated account manager, making sure that whatever you need, if you don't understand how you're driving it still, something goes on, we're there and in support of the product all the way through the life of it.
Brilliant. Yeah, let's talk about carrier partnerships. They've always been kind of messy historically. We probably have to break a lot of old habits and old models.
Mm-hmm.
So, which you're doing. Maybe describe, how and what made you need to flip the script on the way carriers have always behaved and worked.
Well, it depends on which side of the carrier channels you're talking about. Direct services, the carriers have always been the resource that you had. There was nobody else there. Now there's getting to be competition in certain areas, but still it's buy it from us. You've got nobody else to go to. And then you had the attitude of support and service afterwards. And a lot of times you're just getting the same old stuff down the street. Again, broadband versus dedicated internet access. Broadband's a shared environment with a lower SLA. Dedicated internet access is a much higher SLA, and it's not a shared environment. It's essentially data center grade bandwidth delivered to your location. You didn't have a a great selection of things to do. You didn't have great support. You didn't have, well, you had customer service. Sign the deal, sign the deal, sign the deal. Um, and then after that, it was, okay, hurry up and wait for delivery and installation and all the processes. So we've tried to take every pain across the board that we've experienced. As you say, our sales team, our executive team, our technical team, all of those groups have decades and decades of experience in telecom. And we've all sort of vowed to ourselves and to the company that we don't want to be that way. We want to be involved, understanding and work with the group, because it's frustrating to be on the far side and not understand how and what's going on. So say we've got fully encompassed provisioning teams that work hand in hand with the customer on how things are going. We've got turn up teams that work with them on the physical turn up of IP, cloud services, things like that. We've got 24/7 support that is happy to pick up the phone and answer questions on anything you may want to do in the middle of the night. All the things that frustrated us, we just tried to eliminate. So it's hard to, they say there's hundreds and hundreds of little cliche things that we've just, no, we can't. It's got to be a partnership with the customer, not a vendor relationship to a customer.
Got it. And you're doing stellar work with MSPs who are really on
Yep.
fire. The business model is now settled on MSPs for so many services, and yet the underlying connectivity is still like a checkbox. Why is that
Well,
mindset challenging for MSPs?
again, in the MSP world, you've been the technical pro
Mhm.
supporting your client, and you didn't have support for the product you were trying to sell. A lot of times, you didn't
Mm.
have definitive support. Nobody had your back. Again, the same way our engineering team and our support teams are, is we have to have your back. You're the guy in the field that is working the service, technically the support person for this customer. This is a relation to it, and if there's an issue, we should be jump to the ready to make sure that you've got everything you need to solve the issue,
Mm.
whether it's our problem or it's not really our problem. It's something you're experiencing in the layer 3 internet world, whatever it may be. We've got engineering resources available to help figure it out for you or with you. Again, we like to be more of the educational side of things on networking. It's a customer should be involved in what's going on to the best of their understanding to try and, again, teach them the better. MSPs the
Mm.
same way. We've got a team that does nothing but pre-design analysis. Give us the idea,
Mm.
or give us the idea of the network you're looking for. We'll draw it out on the national map or the international map, and then we'll overlay suggested layer 3 IP architectures. Say you want to replace MPLS with Ethernet. Here's an IP architecture for an OSPF network to replace MPLS with Ethernet.
Mm.
Try and again, they they can see somewhere they want to go with their customer. Maybe they don't have the comfort level with the technologies to do it. And again, it's not about how to program each piece. It's how does it all work together? What happens here? How do you get your layer 3 on top of your layer 2 private network to architecture things appropriately with proper, EWAN redundancies, things like that. And I can't expect everybody to understand that. Everybody has their group of verticals that they're really good in. And sometimes this is the needed tool that they, just need access to. So again, in the MSP world, we're finding great traction on working with them on just being somebody that's supportive, white glove
Fantastic.
style service.
Love it. White gloves. You don't see those men anymore. Used to see them a lot, but they're figurative white gloves. I'm guessing you're not actually wearing white gloves on
No,
a day to
no,
day.
no, not today.
Okay.
I
Let's
do
talk
have
about
leather. I have
leather
leather
gloves.
gloves, yeah, but
That's a different
not white ones.
service. Yes.
Yeah.
So talk about security. I mean, it's a real headache. It's real challenge getting the architecture and network segmentation right. And how do you make security more accessible and understandable for MSPs who may not have a whole big in-house security team?
Well, we out of the box treat internet like it is. It's an
Mm,
unprotected cousin that, is could do anything you may not understand. But um our product offering, our one pipe multi-connect, is a dynamic capacity pipe. So let's say we put a 10 gig one pipe into your facility, and then your primary service is DIA or you need internet, but you use SD-WAN and you've got all these other services. Well, we'll work with you in engineering to essentially privatize your SD-WAN links between your offices and remote facilities. That way it's isolated layer 2 point-to-point transit or EWAN style transit, thus reducing your need for internet services over the top unless you want to use them for a failover. The same thing on the internet world. Hey, we have a business network, we have a guest network, and we have an IoT network. Well, great. Here's an internet service dedicated for your business network. Here's one dedicated for your guests, isolated from the first one. Here's one for IoT. It's only 10 megs and it's isolated from all of them. Again, the architecture of the solution that you can bring into a facility over a single fiber pair or over multiple fiber pairs when you're building a ring, really, the services and how you slice and dice them helps your base architecture of your network.
mm,
I've said a couple times the network is the forgotten redheaded stepchild sometimes when you're talking about security. Everybody's worried about the front door. Well, once the front door is open, how far can they go where? So we we work, like I say, with their teams on proper IP and layer 3 designs. That way you've got segmentation, micro segmentation if your team can support that level of firewalling, things like that. Suggested best practices, management, out of band networks. Again, we'll let our carrier expertise trickle down into your local network so you can learn and grow with it to scale.
mm. Sounds fantastic. And most customers aren't living in one cloud anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Increasingly, it's a multi-cloud world, a lot of hybrid cloud, private cloud instances. How do you help MSPs like connect all the dots between AWS or Azure or Google Cloud or Oracle or whoever they might be using?
Well, in our sales force, we've got a sales engineering team which
Mm,
can work with you. Massive ourselves has multiple paths and on ramps to almost every cloud provider that's out
mm,
there, even the new digital realm 3D providers, things like that. Um, Multi-cloud environment just involves proper network design. Again, at the layer 3 architecture, how are you going to interconnect? What type routing? What type services? Uh, Things that they might be comfortable with, but not quite comfortable with because of the design architecture involved. Our engineering team or our pre-sales engineering team will step in, give them suggested known engineering solutions. We can white glove it without any issue to, here, let's sign an NDA, give us some information about how your architecture is currently, and we'll work a solution that works into your architecture without any changes between you, your cloud, your Oracle cloud instance, your AWS instance,
mm,
things like that. If needed, we offer a cloud router service also. So
mm,
if you're not capable of handling that in the simplistic side or even in the more advanced side, or you're not comfortable with it, step on with our engineering team and we'll put a cloud router in the middle of the service for you, help you manage that cloud route service between you and your facilities. So you've got, again, ease of operations all the way through on the service. And then, from the MSP's environment, we stay in our lane.
mm,
We're carriers. We're really good at being a carrier. Let's stay being really good
mm,
at being a carrier. It's as I say, partnering with an MSP in the open environment is perfectly happy. Again, we're technological resources on the network side. We're not here to try and push firewalls or vendors or anything else.
Mm, good to hear. Let's talk a little bit about your footprint. I'm here in Boston. There's lots of options and connectivity. It's a surplus of even residential options,
Mm-hmm.
with fixed wireless. Now you're out west, traditionally less choice, but all the excitement, it seems to be deploying new options in rural areas. What does your footprint look like, and how do you see it
Well,
evolving?
we service over the fiber optic networks. We have about 22 million accessible buildings here in the U.S. We're
Wow.
actually directly interconnected with 152 carriers currently in
Wow.
North America, several in Europe and the Asia Pac markets, but our big footprint is North America. Um, Again, we're here to be the carrier interleave so we can provide services coast to coast. We can do private line services between a Lumen circuit and Verizon back east without
Mm,
any problem. We can do Windstream. We support every underlying carrier's fiber optic service that meets our qualifications, which there's, quite a few so far. And over that network, what we do is we use them to get to your facility, and it's essentially the physical pipe. Think of it as the conduit or the drinking straw. And inside that, we actually build an Ethernet architecture to our net edge device, and we deliver independent, isolated services. Here's
mm,
your internet service, 123. Here is your private line EWAN service. Here is a 100 meg connection to AWS. Here's a 100 meg connection to Azure. Here's a 100 meg connection to Google Cloud. Here's cloud route services. Again, all delivered independently, isolated on Ethernet, but as independent services to the customer's premise. So you can take a single port out, you can do hybrid trunking out, you can isolate port by port by port. And we support services anywhere from pretty much 100 meg through 400 gig now.
mm.
Um, Again, we've got a 100 gig client site NID, and we've got a couple sites that we're working on 400 gig NIDs for. So depending on what your service architecture is or your accessibility in the rural market area for fiber, if you only got, one local provider, well, we'll help the local provider. We'll buy the service from the local provider underneath, and then we'll inject as I like to say, the champagnes down the line for you.
Mm.
And then we do
Impressive.
all, yeah, we do all interactions at the lower level. Lower level, we are the carrier of record end to end. So it's again treated as a in network, on network, massive service all the way to your location.
Wow. Interesting. So as CTO, how do you think about future-proofing your network? You've got all these new workloads coming on stream, IoT and edge, and even my home office studio here. I thought a gig, oh, that'll be fine forever. And already looking at ways I need to expand for what I do. And the MSPs are expanding. How do you see yourself continuing to be able to help them over the next couple of years?
Well, again, it's a big part of it is isolation and segmentation,
Mhm.
proper identification of use of traffic. Not everything needs to talk to everything. You and I grew up in a day where it just went on the LAN, and everything was on
Good
the
luck.
LAN.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was, and that was the way it's been treated for a long time. Then if you start architecting, and the hardest part is going backwards. You're growing so fast, you're doing things. Oops, we didn't do this. Now we've got to try and figure out how to, without causing any issues, re-architect something to provide the isolation that we should have put in place. If you have any chance at all, if you're planning anything new, start today. Look at what you're doing and look at ways that you can independently isolate, if not each service, at least each server and each group in that, and say, okay, that these don't need to talk there. Architecturally, I can think of like our SQL servers in one of our clusters. They have 5 different interfaces, and there's a management, there's a private network between the SQLs for clustering replication, there's one for access for client accesses, there's one for back end management and monitoring. Everything's independently isolated. If you're dealing with your own private networks, you've got lots of space to play with and a little bit of pre-design architecture. You can do some really neat things with layer 2 and VLANs and layer 3 that can just put the baselines in place to manage proper accessibility. If you look
Brilliant.
at your cloud, say cloud and front door is a whole other thing. The less your corporate architecture relies on the internet, the less your exposure is to that same service. So if you've got cloud architectures and you're using VPN to get to them, look at a private cloud connection. That eliminates that crossing the internet potential, not that there's a man in the middle problem, but there's latency issues, there's packet loss, and eventually as AI moves forward, potentially a man in the middle problem if somebody can packet capture enough.
Yes, lots of roadblocks to worry about. Speaking of which, one final piece of advice, so many enterprises, even MSPs, treat connectivity as an afterthought. And I see that because I have a daily live stream video show like this, and you can tell we have perfect latency and no jitter but you'd be amazed how many, folks sitting in their corporate network, 1080p little live stream here, and they have issues and challenges. These are Fortune 1000 kind of companies. What's one piece of advice you could give them to rethink the way they do things today?
Again, don't be afraid to change. Look at your architectures, look at your serviceability, look at how you're connecting things, and then look at, is that the best way to connect things? Again, it's pretty simple. There's a lot of environments where, as you grow up in a network, you just keep adding PCs to the VLAN. Well, have you got a chatty VLAN? I've got all these PCs. Let's say it's just a couple hundred, but those couple hundred talk a lot. Why do they need to talk to each other? Again, should you, at consumer level or at desktop level, isolate a lot of that communication? Or is there other things you can do to segment departments from departments, groups from groups, things like that, where again, you can apply even stricter rules at the inside my network firewalling level? Does they have to have a reason to attach to accounting? No, they don't get to accounting. They can't even see those networks or those servers. So again, top to bottom, not just the front door and everything outside the front door, but look at what happens if you get a breach. At that point, again, it's preventative. How far can they go? Where can they go? If they come in here, that should be one of our most protected, coveted areas. Nobody ever goes there. Okay, great. Well, it should be almost impenetrable, isolated from any other system on your network. At the receptionist desk, somebody happens to get in there. What can the receptionist get to? And again, you might have to look at firewall microsegmentation for services. Again, penetration isn't just the internet it's all physical environments, and then again the breadth of what they can access once they get there.
Well, so much insight, so much experience. This is why I'm not worried about AI stealing our jobs. You're just a wealth of information and knowledge, and thanks for joining and sharing. Appreciate the time.
Well, thank you for having me, Evan.
And thanks everyone for listening, watching, sharing this episode. And be sure to check out our new show on Fox Business and Bloomberg TV at techimpact.tv. Thanks everyone. Thanks, James.
Thanks, Evan. Have a good day.
Take care.